Welcome back to the Life with the Browns. For 19 seasons, the audience believed they had Janelle Brown figured out. She wasn't the emotional one. She wasn't the dramatic one. She definitely wasn't the jealous one. Janelle was the smart one, the calm strategist, the working wife, the numbers person, the quiet force who kept the Brown family financially breathing while chaos swirled around her. Fans called her the logical backbone of the family, the only adult in a house full of ego, tears, and manipulation. In comment sections, people defended her like she was a personal friend. On Reddit threads, viewers praised her independence. On TikTok edits, she was framed as the cool, unbothered queen who didn't need Kody Brown to validate her existence. For years, she was untouchable. And then season 20 happened. The tell-all didn't just reveal cracks. It exposed fault lines. Suddenly, the woman millions had champions started telling on herself. One Reddit user summed up the collective shock perfectly. "I feel bamboozled. I've watched this family since day one. I thought I knew the main characters of the wives, but Janelle has me puzzled." That post exploded with hundreds of responses. And the tone wasn't anger. It was confusion. Because the version of Janelle fans thought they knew, the financial guru, the independent thinker, the practical realist, began unraveling under the weight of her own words. For years, viewers believed Janelle saw through Kody's manipulation, that she understood exactly who he was, that she stayed only because she chose to, not because she needed to. But during the tell-all, something shifted. Her admissions didn't sound strategic. They didn't sound empowered. They sounded revealing. And not in the way fans expected. Some critics claimed they saw it from the beginning, that Janelle was always more calculated than she appeared. That she played quiet while moving pieces behind the scenes. That she wasn't the innocent bystander in the family's dysfunction. But most viewers didn't want to believe that. They remembered the moments she chose her kids over Kody. They remembered her standing firm during COVID fights. They remembered her refusing to bow to Robyn's emotional theatrics. Those were the highlight reels. What the tell-all forced fans to confront was the possibility that the image had been curated, that the reasonable wife persona might not have been the full truth. And that realization hit hard. Because if Janelle, the grounded one, the logical one, wasn't exactly who she presented herself to be, then what else had the audience misunderstood about this family? Was she really the financial mastermind? Or was she simply the most convincing narrator? The myth of Janelle the responsible adult worked because it contrasted so sharply with everyone else. Kody was emotional and impulsive. Robyn was strategic and tearful. Christine was passionate and reactive. Mary was wounded and loyal. Janelle, by comparison, looked steady. But when you start pulling at that thread, when you examine her financial decisions, her long-term investments, her choices around Coyote Pass, her loyalty shifts, the narrative becomes far more complicated. She positioned herself as the wife who worked, the one who understood money, the practical thinker in a sea of emotional chaos. Yet the financial outcomes didn't always reflect that image. And that's where the discomfort begins. Because the question viewers walked away with wasn't, did Janelle make mistakes? Everyone makes mistakes. The real question was the persona itself part of the strategy? Was the independence narrative carefully cultivated? Was the calm demeanor a shield? Was the "I don't need a man" identity built while still orbiting around Kody's approval? And to answer that, you have to go back to the beginning. Back to how Janelle entered this family. Back to the circumstances of her marriage. Back to the patterns that were there long before cameras ever showed up. During season 20, Janelle criticized Robyn with a phrase that fans clung to. She said Robyn knew how to give power to get power. It sounded like sharp insight, like someone who recognized manipulation when she saw it. Viewers applauded. They believed this proved Janelle understood the game Robyn was playing with Kody. But here's the uncomfortable part. People who recognize a tactic that clearly often recognize it because they understand it intimately, because they've seen it up close, or because they've used it themselves. The tell-all didn't just expose cracks in Robyn's strategy. It quietly exposed that Janelle may have understood the power exchange dynamic long before Robyn ever entered the picture. And if that's true, if Janelle wasn't just the observer, but an early participant in the same subtle power plays, then the entire smart but above it all narrative shifts. Not into villain territory, but into complexity, into strategy, into a woman who may have been far more aware and far more involved than fans were ever prepared to admit. And once you see that possibility, you can't unsee it. Because the story of Janelle Brown might not be about the reasonable wife trapped in chaos. It might be about the quietest strategist in the room. And that realization changes everything. Now here's the part of the story that changes everything. Because Janelle didn't just understand the playbook. She may have written it. Before she was Kody Brown's second wife, she was already inside the family circle. Not as a stranger. Not as an outsider drawn in by faith. She was Mary's sister-in-law. Janelle was married to Mary's brother. Let that settle for a second. These women weren't casual acquaintances meeting at church socials. They shared holidays, dinners, family spaces, history, trust. And during the season 20 tell-all, Janelle admitted something that made viewers freeze. She said that back then she sensed she might have a thing for Kody, for her sister-in-law's husband. Think about the layers of that. She sat across from Mary at family gatherings, watched their marriage up close, observed the dynamic, and somewhere in that proximity, attraction grew. And then she acted on it. When the topic came up at the tell-all, Janelle didn't look haunted. She didn't appear burdened by guilt. She laughed. Yeah, no big deal. No big deal? For her, maybe. But for Mary? Mary later described what that experience felt like. Watching someone you trusted slowly shift from family member to emotional rival. Discovering that the woman sitting at your table had been harboring feelings for your husband. Polygamy may prepare you to share a husband in theory. It does not prepare you for betrayal that begins in your own extended family. And the timeline only makes it sharper. Janelle married Kody the day after Mary's birthday. The day after. And when Mary struggled with that, Janelle reportedly told Kody that Mary shouldn't have feelings about it. That statement alone reveals a pattern. From the very beginning, Janelle positioned herself as the rational one, while dismissing anyone else's perfectly human emotional reaction. If Mary felt hurt, she was overreacting. If Mary struggled, she was emotional. If Mary expressed pain, she was dramatic. Meanwhile, Janelle framed herself as logical, above the chaos, detached. But detachment can sometimes be strategy. Mary has said that what initially impressed Kody about Janelle was her work ethic. She had an office job. She was steady. She brought income. Fans used to joke about that, pointing out that to a door-to-door salesman, a stable paycheck might have looked revolutionary. But looking back, that detail feels less humorous and more revealing. Janelle didn't just enter the marriage as a romantic interest. She entered as an asset. She understood something about Kody that the other wives didn't fully grasp yet. Kody valued usefulness. He responded to women who made his life easier, who stabilized his finances, who didn't challenge his ego directly, who contributed tangible value. Janelle made herself indispensable, and that positioning bought her something the other wives rarely had: protection. For years, when conflicts erupted, the fallout rarely stuck to Janelle. Mary became the controlling first wife. Christine became the emotional one. Robin became the manipulative favorite. But Janelle? She floated. And then Kody said something during a conflict with his sons that many viewers overlooked at the time. He called her the Teflon Queen. Back then it sounded like bitterness, like a man lashing out. But now, fans are revisiting that comment with new eyes. Because Teflon means nothing sticks. Accusations slide off. Blame evaporates. Consequences don't attach. And when you look at the family history, it's hard not to notice the pattern. When Mary and Janelle clashed early on, Mary became the villain in the public narrative. When Christine expressed dissatisfaction, she was labeled immature or jealous. When Robin entered and tensions escalated, Robin absorbed massive public scrutiny. But Janelle maintained her image. The calm one. The reasonable one. The financially responsible one. even when the family's financial decisions, including Coyote Pass, turned disastrous. Even when money disappeared into investments that never materialized. Even when she admitted she had no legal claim to property she helped fund. Nothing seemed to stick. The Teflon Queen nickname wasn't just an insult. It may have been an observation. And that's where the story darkens. Because if Janelle mastered the art of appearing reasonable while positioning herself advantageously, if she understood from day one that usefulness equaled leverage, if she quietly secured her standing by being the least confrontational but the most practical, then her survival in the Brown family wasn't accidental. It was strategic. And the tell-all didn't create that narrative. It just cracked it open. For years, fans believed Janelle was the only wife playing checkers while everyone else played emotional chess. Now, some viewers are wondering if she was playing chess all along. Quietly, carefully, and always making sure that when the dust settled, nothing stuck to her. Welcome back to the life with the Browns. For years, the spotlight burned hottest on Robyn. She was labeled the manipulator, the favorite, the interloper who disrupted the original dynamic. And while viewers dissected every tear and every side-eye Robyn gave, Janelle stood slightly off stage, calm, measured, above the chaos. The reasonable wife, the peacekeeper, the one who just wanted everyone to get along. But when you zoom in on the pattern instead of the persona, the story shifts. Because Janelle didn't always avoid drama. Sometimes she initiated it, then stepped back and let someone else absorb the explosion. The infamous drain incident sounds small on the surface, almost petty, but it reveals more than fans realized at the time. Back when the family was living in cramped trailers, money tight, resources limited, Mary asked Janelle to stop putting food down the kitchen drain. There was no garbage disposal. The plumbing was fragile. Every clog meant either expensive repairs they couldn't afford or hours of Mary bent over the sink trying to fix it herself. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't dramatic. It was a practical request. Please don't put food down the drain. Janelle later admitted she intentionally put more food down the drain after that, out of spite. She laughed about it. Meanwhile, Mary dealt with the consequences. When confronted, Janelle denied wrongdoing directly to Mary's face. Then she reframed the conflict for Cody, painting Mary as aggressive, hostile, overreacting. So the issue wasn't clogged pipes anymore. It became, Mary has a bad attitude. And that's the pattern critics are now revisiting. Action, denial, reframe, victim shift. Over time, Mary developed a reputation inside the family, difficult, controlling, hard to live with. But how much of that reputation formed because every time she reacted to something tangible, the reaction became the story instead of the cause? Janelle rarely raised her voice. She rarely appeared flustered on camera. She maintained composure. And perception is powerful. If one person is visibly frustrated and the other is smiling calmly, most observers instinctively assume the calm one is rational. That's how Teflon coating works. Nothing sticks. Because the calm exterior becomes armor. Cody's Teflon Queen comment starts to sound less like bitterness and more like reluctant acknowledgement. He'd lived inside that dynamic for decades. He saw the push and pull. The quiet provocation followed by strategic retreat. The way Janelle could support him publicly while conflicts burned between the other wives. But here's the key difference. Cody had no reason to expose her. Janelle backed him when it counted. She reinforced his authority. She rarely embarrassed him on camera. She positioned herself as the low-maintenance partner, the one who didn't demand constant emotional labor. To Cody, that was valuable. To viewers, it read as maturity. But maturity and strategy can sometimes look identical from the outside. And that's why this reevaluation feels so unsettling for longtime fans. Because it forces a harder question. Was Janelle the easygoing wife? Or was she the most skilled at managing how she was perceived? Mary absorbed the villain narrative for years. Christine absorbed the dramatic label. Robyn absorbed the manipulator branding. Janelle? She absorbed admiration. And admiration can be the most effective shield of all. The tell-all didn't invent these stories. It just reminded viewers of moments they once brushed aside. The drain, the early courtship, the birthday wedding date, the quiet reframing of conflicts. Individually, they seemed minor. Together, they form a pattern that's harder to ignore. Because sometimes the loudest manipulator isn't the one crying on the couch. Sometimes it's the one calmly explaining why everyone else misunderstood the situation. And if that's true, then the legacy of Janelle Brown isn't about being the reasonable wife in an unreasonable family. It might be about being the most underestimated strategist in the room. Now, ask yourself something. If Janelle was Cody's most loyal financial ally, if she helped reinforce his authority, if she backed his money decisions and made them sound reasonable, why would he ever disrupt that arrangement? He wouldn't. And for years, he didn't. But the financial layer of this story may be the most revealing of all, because it strikes directly at the heart of Janelle's public identity. Her entire brand was built on one thing: I understand money. She was the numbers wife, the practical one, the budgeting brain, the steady income earner. So when cracks appear in that narrative, they hit differently. During the Las Vegas era, the Browns were no longer scraping by in trailers. They were earning steady TLC income. They had 4 homes. They had visibility. They had opportunity. They had money. Which is why what surfaced after the tell-all raised eyebrows. According to accounts revisited by fans, Janelle allegedly pushed to cut Mary out of portions of the family finances, arguing that her own children didn't have enough to eat. Pause there. This wasn't the Lehigh trailer era. This wasn't food stamps and pantry budgeting. This was peak show success. The idea that one household's children were going hungry while another wife was hoarding resources doesn't align cleanly with the financial reality at the time. But the claim served a purpose. It reframed the debate. Instead of redistribution of income, it became a mother fighting for her kids. And that's a powerful shield. Mary's response, however, was quiet and devastating. I'm sorry, you thought I was taking something that belonged to you. That sentence carried years of being cast as the selfish one, the greedy one, the difficult one. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Cody reportedly wanted Mary to receive less than the other wives. And who stood beside him? Janelle. Not loudly, not aggressively, but consistently. She became the financial validator, the reasonable voice that made unequal decisions sound logical instead of cruel. That's why some fans now refer to her as Cody's pitbull. Not because she barked, but because she enforced. She handled the justification. She lent credibility. She made decisions look fair when they disproportionately hurt the wife already on the margins. And all while maintaining the image of calm neutrality. The irony is almost unbearable. The woman celebrated as the financial guru may have used that authority in ways that reinforced the hierarchy instead of balancing it. And then came Flagstaff. That's when the dynamic cracked. Cody attempted to flip the script, trying to rally other wives against Janelle. He went to Mary. The same tactic that had once isolated Mary was suddenly aimed at Janelle. And Janelle was furious. Not necessarily because the tactic was immoral, but because it was effective. She knew how powerful triangulation could be because she'd seen it work. She just never expected to be on the receiving end. But the financial questions weren't the only ones resurfacing. The parenting questions hit even harder. From episode 1 of season 1, something stood out. Daddy Logan. That phrase has lingered in fans' minds for over a decade. Logan Brown, Janelle's eldest son, often appeared more like a co-parent than a child. Cooking breakfast, managing siblings, taking on emotional weight that didn't belong to him. That's called parentification. And viewers saw it immediately. Christine and the other original wives often filled in maternal gaps for Janelle's children, especially before the move separated everyone into different homes. One story in particular became symbolic. Savannah's hair. According to family accounts, Christine handled Savannah's hair on Monday mornings because tangles had built up over the weekend. Fans began asking uncomfortable questions. Was Janelle so detached from day-to-day care that basic routines fell through the cracks? Was she physically present, but emotionally or practically absent? One commenter summarized the criticism bluntly: Janelle wanted to be a mother without necessarily wanting to do the work of mothering. Harsh. But the concerns didn't stop there. When Madison, as a teenager, began dating an older man, some viewers felt uneasy watching it unfold. They questioned where the protective boundaries were, where the guidance was. The show never fully unpacked those dynamics. And then came the rumors, claims about international cutscenes that allegedly included footage not aired in the U.S. According to those circulating accounts, Janelle may have told Gabe and Garrison to move out to accommodate Cody during COVID tensions. If true, that complicates the long-held belief that Janelle always chose her children over her husband. It suggests a mother navigating loyalty conflicts in ways that weren't always protective. And perhaps the most piercing observation of all came from a fan who said, "Janelle's kids seem more protective of her than she is of them." That line lingers, because her sons have publicly defended her, challenged Cody, expressed frustration, carried emotional weight. They've appeared fiercely loyal. The question critics now ask is whether that loyalty flowed more one direction than the other. None of this erases the moments when Janelle stood firm. None of it erases the times she challenged Cody. But it adds dimension. Because the simplified narrative, Janelle the logical hero, doesn't hold up under full scrutiny anymore. What emerges instead is something more complicated. A woman who understood power dynamics, who navigated them strategically, who sometimes benefited from systems that hurt others, who wasn't purely villain, but wasn't purely victim either. And that complexity is what's rattling longtime viewers, because it forces a reckoning. Maybe Janelle wasn't the saint of the story. Maybe she was the quiet tactician. And sometimes the quiet tactician leaves fewer fingerprints, but shapes just as much of the outcome. The more you pull at this thread, the more unsettling the pattern becomes. Because when you step back and look at Janelle's family dynamic with her children, something feels reversed. Logan wasn't just the oldest sibling. He was Daddy Logan. From the very first episode, viewers watched a teenage boy wake up early to cook breakfast, organize younger siblings, manage chaos before school. He wasn't assisting. He was parenting. That kind of role reversal has a name: parentification. It happens when children take on responsibilities that belong to the adults in the home. Emotional support, household management, stability. And in Janelle's household, it didn't appear to stop with Logan. As the years went on, fans noticed something else. During the divorce and family breakdown, it often looked like her children were emotionally carrying her. Gabe, especially, seemed hyper-aware of his mother's emotional state. Protective, defensive, stepping into conversations like a shield. One viewer phrased it in a way that stuck. Gabe became his mother's emotional support instead of the other way around. When he eventually moved away to Chicago, some fans admitted they felt relief for him. Not because he was escaping his mother, but because he was finally escaping the dynamic where he existed to stabilize her instead of build his own life. The parentification that began with Daddy Logan didn't feel like a one-time survival mechanism. It felt generational. But even those concerns pale next to what resurfaced from the family's own published book. Because this part isn't rumor. It isn't Reddit speculation. It isn't tabloid gossip. It was written by the Browns themselves. After the tell-all reignited scrutiny, readers revisited passages from the family memoir and found something deeply disturbing. The book referenced escalating anger between Janelle and Mary. Not just verbal tension. Physical. The passage described Janelle kneeing Mary in the stomach while Mary was pregnant. Let that sink in. A pregnant woman. A shared household. And a physical strike to her abdomen. When Mykelti was later asked about it in an online segment, she confirmed it happened. It wasn't hearsay. It was documented history. And according to the book, it wasn't an isolated moment. The wording implied multiple physical altercations over time. For years, viewers interpreted Mary's distance from Janelle as bitterness, jealousy, inflexibility. Now that context shifts dramatically. Imagine being pregnant, vulnerable, living in close quarters, and being physically attacked by your sister wife. Imagine going to your husband expecting protection, expecting him to draw a line, and being told it was common for women to be mean to each other.
Common.
That response says more about the family structure than any tell-all ever could. Mary's safety ranked below maintaining peace with a wife who financially supported him. After that incident, Mary reportedly chose never to fully mend fences with Janelle. For decades, fans labeled that stubbornness. But reframed through this lens, it looks like self-protection. Suddenly, every awkward interaction between them carries different weight. Every cold exchange, every guarded expression, every moment Mary seemed withdrawn. It wasn't petty rivalry. It may have been trauma. And here's where the comparison to Robin becomes uncomfortable. For years, fans saw Janelle and Robin as opposites. Robin, emotional, strategic, visibly attached to Cody. Janelle, detached, practical, independent. But look closer. Both smiled around Cody. Both avoided publicly criticizing him. Both seemed to understand that direct confrontation cost more than quiet alignment. And perhaps most telling, Cody rarely rocked the boat with either of them. He openly dismissed Mary. He showed visible contempt toward Christine in later seasons. He challenged them, argued with them, humiliated them on camera. But with Janelle and Robin, the tone was different. Less explosive, more cautious.
Why?
Because both women offered him something he valued. Robin offered emotional validation. Janelle offered financial reinforcement and public loyalty. They weren't identical, but they weren't opposites either. They operated differently, yet both understood how to maintain standing without directly threatening his ego. And that's the part longtime viewers are grappling with. Maybe Janelle wasn't the anti-Robin. Maybe she was simply a different version of strategic. Less tears, more spreadsheets, less overt emotion, more subtle positioning. The hero narrative feels harder to sustain when you factor in physical altercations, financial enforcement, parentified children, and selective loyalty. It doesn't turn her into a cartoon villain, but it does dismantle the saint image. And once that image cracks, the entire history of the Brown family feels less black and white. Because maybe the most powerful players weren't the loudest ones. Maybe they were the ones who smiled, stayed calm, and let everyone else look unstable while they quietly maintained control. Here's the uncomfortable truth fans are starting to sit with. Cody didn't handle Janelle and Robin the way he handled Mary and Christine. He was careful with them. He avoided humiliating them publicly. He maintained working relationships. He didn't openly dismantle their credibility on camera the way he did with the others.
Why?
Because both women gave him something he craved more than love. Validation. They reinforced his authority. They supported his decisions. They made him feel like the patriarch he imagined himself to be, not the fractured, inconsistent husband the cameras often revealed. Once you understand that exchange, the pattern makes more sense. Janelle wasn't just the logical wife floating above chaos. She was complicit in maintaining the structure that benefited her. From the beginning, she aligned with Cody in ways that minimized Mary's standing. She backed financial shifts that sidelined her. She participated in narratives that made Mary seem unreasonable. The Teflon Queen and the favored wife weren't opposites. They were playing the same game at different points in the timeline. Janelle secured her position early, long before Robin arrived. She made herself indispensable, financially useful, low maintenance, non-threatening to Cody's ego. So when Robin entered and began using a similar give power to get power strategy, Janelle recognized it instantly. Not because she was above it, but because she'd done it first. That realization reframes her criticism of Robin. It wasn't insight from the outside. It may have been projection from someone who understood the tactic intimately. And that explains something else fans struggled to understand for years. Why didn't Janelle seem as threatened by Robin as Christine did? Because in many ways, they operated from similar playbooks. Different personalities, yes. Different styles, absolutely. But the core dynamic? Support Cody publicly. Avoid direct ego clashes. Let Mary and Christine absorb the emotional fallout, while they remained insulated. Then came the independence narrative. Here's the uncomfortable truth fans are starting to sit with. Cody didn't handle Janelle and Robin the way he handled Mary and Christine. He was careful with them. He avoided humiliating them publicly. He maintained working relationships. He didn't openly dismantle their credibility on camera the way he did with the others.
Why?
Because both women gave him something he craved more than love: validation. They reinforced his authority. They supported his decisions. They made him feel like the patriarch he imagined himself to be, not the fractured, inconsistent husband the cameras often revealed. Once you understand that exchange, the pattern makes more sense. Janelle wasn't just the logical wife floating above chaos. She was complicit in maintaining the structure that benefited her. From the beginning, she aligned with Cody in ways that minimized Mary's standing. She backed financial shifts that sidelined her. She participated in narratives that made Mary seem unreasonable. The Teflon Queen and the favored wife weren't opposites. They were playing the same game at different points in the timeline. Janelle secured her position early, long before Robin arrived. She made herself indispensable, financially useful, low maintenance, non-threatening to Cody's ego. So when Robin entered and began using a similar give power to get power strategy, Janelle recognized it instantly. Not because she was above it, but because she'd done it first. That realization reframes her criticism of Robin. It wasn't insight from the outside. It may have been projection from someone who understood the tactic intimately. And that explains something else fans struggled to understand for years. Why didn't Janelle seem as threatened by Robin as Christine did? Because in many ways, they operated from similar playbooks. Different personalities, yes. Different styles, absolutely. But the core dynamic? Support Cody publicly. Avoid direct ego clashes. Let Mary and Christine absorb the emotional fallout, while they remained insulated. Then came the independence narrative. Post-separation, Janelle leaned hard into the image of self-sufficiency. The empowered woman rediscovering herself. The wife who never truly needed Cody. It sounded inspiring. But fans started noticing contradictions. She moved to North Carolina and lives with Maddie. Savannah moved with her. Her current situation isn't solitary independence, it's interdependence with her daughter. And that isn't inherently wrong. Family support is normal. But when someone sells life coaching about independence, people look at the optics. Janelle now charges for guidance on authenticity, freedom, and breaking away from limiting situations. Critics ask, where was that independence for the 20-plus years she stayed? For the seasons she backed decisions that harmed other wives? For the moments she reinforced Cody's authority? Whether fair or harsh, the skepticism is understandable. Then there's Christine. Christine left and quickly found what appears to be a publicly affectionate, healthy relationship with David Woolley. She's adored, celebrated, thriving. Janelle left and built a quieter life. Some fans who monitor social media closely claim they've noticed subtle shading toward David lately. Whether intentional or overanalyzed, it highlights an uncomfortable contrast. Christine escaped and found romantic joy. Janelle escaped and found stability, but not the same visible reinvention. For someone long framed as the more capable, more logical, more emotionally contained wife, that contrast could sting. And then there's the lingering question, would Janelle return to Cody if circumstances shifted? Some believe only her children's objections prevent reconciliation, that she knows rekindling anything would fracture her relationships with Gabe, Garrison, and others who distance themselves from their father. But that theory gets complicated. When Maddie reportedly objected to Janelle meeting Cody for an apology conversation, Janelle went anyway. If choosing her children over Cody was absolute, that meeting wouldn't have happened. The fact that it did suggests her attachment to Cody, emotionally, psychologically, may run deeper than the independence branding suggests. The tell-all moment involving Jen crystallized the pattern. Janelle claimed Jen said certain things. Jen denied it. The timeline didn't align. The logic wobbled. But Janelle didn't retreat. She doubled down. Confidently. Even when inconsistencies were obvious. That's the Teflon strategy in motion. State it calmly. Maintain composure. Let the storm pass. Even when people see through it, consequences rarely stick. And that may be the larger lesson here. People tell you who they are, but often through actions, not words. For 20 years, Janelle's words painted independence. Her actions often showed alignment. Her words framed financial expertise. Her actions sometimes reinforced imbalance. Her words criticized manipulation. Her actions mirrored similar tactics. This doesn't erase the pain she endured. It doesn't deny the dysfunction she experienced. But it does complicate the hero narrative. Viewers who defended Janelle weren't foolish. They responded to the image presented. The bamboozled feeling so many describe now comes from realizing that image may have been carefully curated. And perhaps Mary deserves the reassessment most of all. The woman labeled cold and difficult may have been guarded for reasons far more serious than personality clashes. Her distance may have been self-protection. Her stiffness may have been survival. So, where does that leave the Brown family story? In a messier place. The characters audiences thought they understood may never have existed in pure form. Editing, alliances, ego management, and self-preservation shaped what millions consumed as reality. The truth, as it often is, sits somewhere darker and more complicated than the narrative arc sold for entertainment. And maybe that's the real takeaway from Season 20. Don't just listen to what people say about themselves. Watch what they do. Because over time, actions always tell the story words try to rewrite.